Hey folks, welcome to the second part of the July Patreon Q&A here on the Golden Bolt. If you'll recall, about a couple weeks back, a week or two back, I'm gonna guess, I had decided to split this original 45-minute Q&A into two because I figured, A, no one really wants to sit here for 45 minutes and listen to Patreon Q&A questions, as interesting as the questions are and as interesting as I try to make the answers be. And speaking of B, because I am in the middle of a move at the time that you're listening to this, so I figured there's a chance that there will be a little bit less content from me in the middle of the month, and I wanted to make up for that in some way by giving main channel viewers another way to engage with things that I say here and have a conversation here. As a reminder, if you'd like to ask one of these questions in a future Patreon Q&A, there is currently a Patreon Q&A thread up for the month of August. You can visit that by going to patreon.com/thegoldenbolt and donating as little as $1 a month. And in addition, for $1 a month, you get ad-free access to videos. If you spend $5 a month at the silver tier, you get early access to videos as well as a bunch of other perks. You can see them all on the Patreon. I'm not going to repeat them all here because that would just waste your time probably, but you should support. It's very fun. There's a Discord server. We have a lot of fun. It's a good time. And those are all my plugs for now, I think. So let's go ahead and move right along to the Patreon questions. First up, from AE Double. First off, why doesn't JTAR9, the largest of the Crubcast, simply not eat the other 7? I'm going to tell Justin that you called him fat. And he then also asks, what skills, experiences, or knowledge that you have related to talking about video games do you think helped you a lot in the field? I'm sorry, unrelated to talking about video games do you think helped you a lot in the field? I was always a writer as a kid. I remember in like 5th grade onward, I would finish my work so quickly in school just because I just did. You know, I always finished my work super quickly in school. And I was that asshole that, you know, killed the grade curve, and I would sleep through class, and then they'd try and wake me up to ask me a question, and I would answer it literally in my sleep. That's not an exaggeration. It happened multiple times. So for a long time before I got super tired and had to work all the time, and that made me sleep instead, I would write. And that was back when I had first moved to across the states, I'll say vaguely. And so I didn't really know a lot of people yet, so I just kind of did my own thing. And one of the things that I did was just imagine, you know, like every kid does. But I would write long-form stories. I remember I had a whole, like, full-size notebook with, and this is stupid, and I'm saying this on air, hundreds of pages of 10-year-old DBZ fan sequel. You know, like every kid did that watched DBZ. And eventually a lot of those ideas spun into an original property that focused on, I don't remember a lot of it, but there were, it was really anime inspired, which is weird because I don't really watch anime, and I never really did outside of Dragon Ball Z. So, but I had hundreds of pages in that one, and then hundreds in the sequel. And so I think writing was the one, and that's actually why I had the format early in the channel's history, if you remember, with the story, gameplay, presentation categories, and the Bolt system for reviews. That was because I needed to limit myself, because I knew that if I started, I wouldn't stop. If you couldn't tell, I'm generally a relatively loquacious person. And so I knew that if I had a perfectionist style, which is another thing, is that for a long time I was a perfectionist, and YouTube kind of broke that out of me, because you can't be one on these platforms. You can't be one in the creative field because it will kill you mentally. And so I limited myself writing-wise, was what I was saying. And eventually, by the time that I knew that the writing style that I had for content was something that I was confident in, and I had done a bunch of tests and samples and reps for voiceover by way of things like Plus One, for example, the PS Plus series that most of you probably don't know exists, that I stopped doing in 2020. Those things gave me the reps and the confidence in my voiceover that I could do something like a lot of the writing that I would do in the past, and not necessarily the dumb DBZ stuff, but I was always one who focused a lot on themes, again, if you couldn't tell. So things like the themes and the repetition and the callbacks and characterization, all this stuff was stuff that I was naturally pretty good at from what people said. I'm trying not to say that I'm just good at it because that sounds like I'm sucking myself off here, but those things benefited me when it came to turning that into content. And then an experience that helped in that regard was the fact that I knew enough about pro wrestling to know the mantra of pro wrestling, which is that the best gimmicks, the best characters are yourself turned up to 11. And that's true for any personality of any sort, is that you turned up to 11 is going to be the most interesting form of a character that you can naturally do. So between that and I always forget who did it, and I always look it up and I always continue to forget. There was a classical American writer who, I think he was American, I'm pretty sure he's American, who, an old English teacher, would use this phrase a lot, and sadly he passed away actually recently, so I can't ask him anymore, and I should have sooner probably. But the quote involved wearing different masks. So you could turn that into hats. It's a very common thing that you hear nowadays. I don't even know that this guy coined it, the writer that is, but you wear a mask in your friendships and different masks in different friend groups. You wear a mask for work. You wear a mask for, your parents, your family, your relationships. You wear a mask where you're out in public. Not that kind, I guess, anymore. But you know what I mean. You have these hats is sometimes what it's also called. And so what I did as somebody who used to be relatively outgoing as a kid and then kind of went into a shell when I moved, and then kind of came out of it and went into it and came out of it and went into it just based on different friend groups or different experiences in life that, nothing bad, just stuff that would send me back into my shell or make me self-conscious, I guess. And looking at it now, it's kind of funny, but that's what high school is, I guess. I took the experience I took that quote of putting on that mask, and I put on the mask of the Golden Bolt when maybe a video or two in. It wasn't like Sly 1 review back in 2016. It was like maybe Ratchet 1 or maybe Mega Man, probably Ratchet 1 more so, where I realized I was self-conscious of my voiceover. I sounded like a fucking dork. Sometimes you can still hear it. I have a very slight, there, you just heard it right there. I have a very slight lisp that if I'm talking fast, it will come out more. When I enunciate, it tends to go away a little bit. And I used to have a pretty substantial stammer. I don't like calling it a stutter because it wasn't like, I don't know, stutter feels like it was a diagnosed thing. That's just a weird block in my brain. But I used to stutter a lot because I had the thing where your brain puts together the words you want to say faster than your mouth can do them. So you would trip all over yourself, like I've done many times already in this one, because I'm talking fast. I'm not giving you voiceover voice or content voice. I'm just giving you me. Even though, and this brings it back full circle here, my content voice now is pretty much just my voice. So I put on the mask of the Golden Bolt character, which was just a more interesting me that wasn't ashamed to make a fool out of himself. So I could yell into a microphone and try and entertain people or teach people some stuff that they maybe didn't know about a game or movie or show or whatever it might be. And over time, that then informed me. And so while the Golden Bolt was a character that was me turned up to 11, that over time, that 11 became like my normal. And so now I'm just, I like to think, a more interesting person as a result of that. Because, nothing else about me necessarily changed too much. I still have the same hobbies, the same interests, that sort of stuff. Obviously, I've had new experiences that informed the changes that have happened to me over the last 7 years since I started this channel. But that mask doesn't exist anymore. I just kind of am the Golden Bolt, which is kind of weird. And I've never had any imposter syndrome stuff that really made me have to re-separate those things or make me be afraid of my identity outside of the channel or anything, because if I didn't have the channel, I'd still be me, you know? So, yeah, that's a really long answer to your question, but I think it was a fun one. I'll say it. And then I think we only have one more question here. Is that right? Hold on. I feel like I'm missing one. Now I gotta look. No? Okay, one more. Cool. We're already 30 minutes into this. So that works. We have a question from Thomas Kuzma to close us out here. He says, we have current realistic games like The Last of Us, Tomb Raider, God of War, and the Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Jedi Survivor and... Shit, what's the other one? He said Star Wars Jedi. Anyway, we have those games trying to showcase the graphics capabilities of newer consoles. Recently, Yahtzee did an extra punctuation, that's a name I haven't heard in a while, on what he would like to see instead of graphics improvements in current, or I guess they are current gen games. He says current, I was going to say next, but they are kind of current now. What kind of upgrades would you like to see improved on newer and future consoles? Well, we're getting to the point where graphics are kind of hitting their... not their peak, but they're going to plateau at this point because there's only so much you can do, and there's only so much time and manpower you can put into sitting behind a computer and slaving over an 8K render of Aloy Horizon Forbidden West's tongue for photo mode. You know, there's only so much you can do with those things before you max out in terms of mental budget. For the staff, let alone the physical budget of the monetary budget, rather. And so we're hitting that threshold faster and faster, I would argue. You know, obviously there's still ways to go because a lot of games that go for 4K haven't quite hit 60 FPS, so there's still, you know, performance things. But as far as upgrades I'd like to see for newer and future consoles, So I've been playing Final Fantasy 16. Disclaimer, Square sent it to me. They sent it to me the day that it came out functionally, so while they did send it to me, I didn't get a chance to play it until like 2 weeks later, so I'm not going to review it most likely because how can I? The hype's already kind of, you know, people who want it have it. I'm not going to convince anyone to buy it. But I've been playing through it, and I've actually been really enjoying it. And one of the things that I really liked is that this game kind of goes for a more Western RPG style of level design, I guess I would say, for lack of a better way to describe it. So there are the things that a lot of these games, open world games, do, where if they put you in an area and it's like a hallway type area, there's like 4 doors and you don't know which door is the one you're supposed to go through, and you're always afraid it's going to lock you into that next area and then you can't leave, and you don't want that, obviously. You want to explore everything and find all the lore, or in this case, usually just potions. But hey, sometimes there's lore, and that's pretty cool. There's a thing in this game called, I think it's just called Animal Instinct, where it'll point you in the direction of where to go. And it's actually a literal animal instinct because you have a pet dog that's with you, I'm assuming at all times in the game. If they kill that dog, I will be very sad. They're probably going to kill the dog. It's there's a dog in a media piece that's probably going to fucking die. But anyway, he's a good boy. And if you hold down the left stick, he tells you exactly which direction you're supposed to go, which sounds like baby mode. And I know a lot of people judge those things. Square has a couple baby mode things in 16, where there's like an auto dodge and an auto, you can do the more complex combos just by pressing square, stuff like that. And I think those things are valuable, even if people want to be dicks about it. But I think that this specific baby mode is really useful because so far the game hasn't done the thing that a lot of people complain about with like God of War Ragnarok, where the characters just immediately answer the questions or answer the puzzle for you. Side note, in God of War Ragnarok, when I had played it, I don't know if there was a patch or something, but I didn't have that issue. They didn't answer things for me unless I was being really stupid and had no idea, like I missed something obvious about a puzzle where, you know, you're staring at a wall and you're like, what do I do? And then you see the answer and you're like, oh, I'm just stupid. One of those. Otherwise, they didn't really help me whatsoever. Anyway, though, this game doesn't do that because there aren't really puzzles or anything. There aren't really many ways you can go so far as I am in the game. But I like being able to, if I'm in an area with a lot of forking paths, I like being able to hold down the left stick. The dog points me where I'm supposed to go, so I know where to go first. Because I hate getting locked into a cutscene or a battle and then locked into a new area. So that's not really a big upgrade or anything technologically speaking, but I love those common sense things. I want to see more games do that. I want to see more games do, in a similar vein, the Ghost of Tsushima Wind thing, the lack of a minimap. They spend so much time, developers do, working on these things, sitting behind a computer, putting so much time into environments that we are trained to not pay attention to. Because we have an overstimulating HUD, we have a marker that tells us exactly where to go, we're on our phones. We are built for distraction nowadays, we're built for instant dopamine. And a game like Ghost of Tsushima, or a game like a Breath of the Wild, or a Tears of the Kingdom, or an Elden Ring, they do a stellar job of forcing you to engage with the world on its terms. And that's something that more games need to do and stick their foot down and stand their ground on that. Because, yeah, you know, that doesn't mean I'm going to like every game that does that. Sometimes there are going to be decisions that I absolutely hate where they stand their ground on those things. And that's fine, because that's art. You don't have to like every piece of art, and you don't have to bitch about it if you don't. You can just move on and say, I don't like this. I think that more games should get rid of the minimap, or make it an opt-in option rather than an opt-out. Because yes, a lot of games have limited HUD modes. Horizon Forbidden West, for example, has a limited HUD mode, I believe. And I'm pretty sure it does. I remember thinking when I looked in the menu that it did have that, and then I thought, okay, sure, that'd be cool, but you're actively making the game less enjoyable, because that's not the terms on which the game wants you to operate. The game wants you to be overstimulated visually, and without those markers, it's a more difficult game, and it will be more immersive for some players, but that game's not built that way. It's not built in such a way that when you turn those things off, you know instinctually where to go, because there aren't 4 types of smoke billowing in the distance, where there's a black smoke, which means, oh, something's burning over there. That might mean that there's raiders. There's not a white smoke that means there's a settlement. There's not these environmental indicators that tell you, oh, I know what that thing means systemically in the game. You know, in Tears of the Kingdom, there's the bloopies. Bloopies? What are they called? Bloopies. Yeah, the little rabbit guys. Every time you see one, you know that there is a cave nearby. The game doesn't tell you that outright. You can find some dialogue from a random NPC that might tell you that, but you just start to realize that over time. That every time there's a bloopy, there's a cave nearby. And that's one of those things that then every time you see it, sure, it's a video game thing, but I don't care. I don't care that it's contrived that the wind is blowing at your back in Ghost of Tsushima, because A, it's a cool thing in terms of like the mythos of they make Jin Sakai the so-called storm that stopped the Mongol invasion of Tsushima. I think that's really cool, weaving these characters that did not exist into the lore of our world, you know? And I love stuff like, again, that wind feature, because they would do that, or they would make you, unlike Horizon, follow footprints. Horizon would make you follow footprints, but you'd look down, you'd track a thing, and you just instantly have this holographic thing telling you where to go. And while Horizon did some really cool things, like having the AI companions moving at your speed during missions, rather than you have to like do that half walk, half run to stay at pace with them, I love that. I kind of liked a thing like Ghost of Tsushima, even if I didn't love it being footprints every time, where to do some of the missions, you physically had to look down and track where you were going, and you had to look in the distance, and you had to see different pieces of the environment. That's my thing. We are seeing budgets continue to balloon at the AAA level, and it makes it harder and harder for developers to sustain themselves. And one failure can put a company out of business or get them bought by one of the other companies, I guess, at this point. I want to see that work get appreciated more. Because, I don't know, I think that we're at a point where games will always continue to evolve and advance and optimize, and there'll be cool ideas like this that haven't been decided on yet or haven't been thought of yet that I will love in a few years, I'm sure. But that's one where I don't know. I just think that with how pretty games continue to get, if we're not looking at them actually, does it matter? Does it matter that a game like Tears of the Kingdom runs at, I don't know, what, 720p or maybe technically 900p on docked mode? Does it matter that the game has frame dips? Sure, to some extent, yes. But I think that the very same people that go out of their way to say, well, this game looks like shit, are the ones that aren't looking at games anyway. And that's a problem. And it's not a problem that's going to be solved because that's just called Twitter, or whatever Twitter replacement will exist by the time that this goes live. But, yeah, I'm going to go with that. And since we're 40 minutes into this Q&A here, I'm going to call it for now. Maybe I probably won't split this into two, but maybe I will, just to give you guys more spread content over the course of the month. I'm not sure. If you see it in one video, you'll know. If you see it this part in 2 weeks after the first one comes out, you'll also know. Yeah, cool. Thank you guys so much for continuing to support the channel and the channels and Crub and the Golden Bolt. Thank you for helping it reach 100,000 subscribers. Genuinely, I don't know what more I can do to thank you and repay you for that, besides continue to provide the content and the commentary that you guys are here for. And that means a lot. That means a lot that there are those people here, and that because of something like this, I now have an office space dedicated to it coming soon. And while that means that I'm going to be probably taking more sponsors that I wouldn't have taken before, because hey, you gotta pay the bills. I'm really excited for the future. So thank you, and it's only gonna get bigger and better, and probably still also worse from here. So as always, until next time, stay golden.